One of my favourite aspects of Avatar: The Last Airbender is how it explores the effect war has on its characters. The life they live can get very dark, but we see how they are able to reach the light at the end of the tunnel and find that peace they once knew. Aang, Zuko, Katara, and Sokka were all victims of the war the Fire Nation waged. And so was Jet. But unlike the others, who found light in all the darkness, Jet wasn't quite able to. When we first meet him, he is like most people Team Avatar encounter on their travels. Someone whose life had been affected by war. He was a war orphan, a child soldier, someone whose disdain towards the Fire Nation was very real and understandable. He was someone who drew a lot of parallels to Katara and Sokka. The Fire Nation took his mother and father away from him at a young age, forcing him to grow up early and be independent, to fend for himself. And similar to how Sokka and Katara care for those in their tribe, Jet cares for the freedom fighters, keeping them safe and fed. But it isn't long until we see Jet's flaws and how his ideology differs from that of Aang, Katara, and Sokka. Unlike them, Jet doesn't find motivation in hope. He finds motivation in hatred. He's filled with a rage so blinding he ordered his followers, young kids, to blow up a dam to flood a city of innocent men, women, and children. To fight against the Fire Nation, he was willing to commit the same crimes as the Fire Nation. Jet demonstrates how war can mould a victim into a villain. But that doesn't mean he's some irredeemable monster. As in Season 2, we see him having recognised his mistakes, beginning to take steps to move forward and put the war behind him. Jet understood that his hatred wouldn't be easy to let go of, so he took himself out of the picture, heading into the Earth Kingdom away from the Fire Nation, so he wouldn't be tempted to act upon his hatred. Though he is filled with animosity towards the Fire Nation, Jet does have love inside him, as we see demonstrated to the freedom fighters, to the Earth Kingdom refugees, and even Zuko for a brief time. Taking Zuko at face value, Jet understood him more than most characters did up to this point. He saw the pain the Fire Nation had caused Zuko with the permanent scar he had been branded with. Jet recognised Zuko as one of them, a potential freedom fighter. But the moment he was able to label Zuko as a firebender, Jet grouped him in with those who destroyed his home, as he does with the rest of the Fire Nation. Jet doesn't hate the group who took away everything he loved. He hates the Fire Nation as a whole. Jet was very young when he experienced this traumatic event. So this deep-rooted trauma causes him to see those of the Fire Nation, even the innocent ones, the same way he saw those who destroyed his village and killed his parents, as threats, as monsters. Jet went after Zuko and Iroh because he saw them as threats to the Earth Kingdom, and he must stop them from destroying another child's life, even if others aren't willing to listen to or believe him. I can imagine Team Avatar thinking in a similar way. I believe that anyone would have had they known 2 secret firebenders were sneaking into the Earth Kingdom, the one place the Fire Nation struggled to have dominion over. Even though Jet was quick to judge and attack Zuko, his immediate concern was legitimate. After all, look what happened when another firebender infiltrated the Earth Kingdom. Jet's motivations here were justified, as they are in most cases, but his actions are flawed. His ideology is flawed. These flaws of his, this deep-rooted hatred he couldn't control, eventually led him to being brainwashed and killed, not by the Firebenders, but by Earthbenders. It was in the Earth Kingdom, the place he thought he could find peace, was where he found death. Killed by a member of a nation he dedicated himself to protecting. This ironic, tragic end shows the flaw in Jet's ideology. You cannot judge each individual as a part of a group. To judge a group and decide they are completely innocent ignores the flaws of each individual. But to judge a group as evil is to ignore the good in certain individuals. Like I said before, Jet's motivations were justified, but his methods were flawed. But there was no one to guide him, no one he could look up to, which characters he parallels like Zuko and Katara did have. And these figures who guided them were a massive reason, probably the only reason they didn't fall onto the dark path, the path Jet found himself on, with no one to tug him off it. Unlike Katara, he never let go of his vengeance, and unlike Zuko, he never really found redemption. Jet tried desperately to do what he thought was right, but he had no one to guide him to do what was actually right. I find it quite sad and a little disappointing that they ended Jet's character arc with a joke in the Ember Island episode, but it actually is quite fitting that Jet was treated like the punchline, because in the eyes of the Fire Nation, people like him are a punchline. Foolish rebels who stand against the ultimate power of the Fire Lord. A bunch of jokes. In the end, Jet died not much different from how he started. Not necessarily a honourable man, but not a malicious or evil one either. I think Jet's arc was about the struggle to let go of his obsessive anger or be a slave to it. It was only going to end one of two ways. Either he comes to terms with his trauma and tries to move on with his life, or we watch his complete self-destruction. But letting go of such trauma is easier said than done. It can make you angry. It can fill you with hate towards people who even resemble those that hurt you. And no matter how far you go to try and escape, it will follow you everywhere. Because it's a part of you. This lack of healing, lack of guidance, this deep-rooted hatred came full circle with his death in the Earth Kingdom. An ironic and tragic end. In the end, unlike many others, he didn't die a hero, but he had taken a step or two onto the path of redemption. So maybe he died not necessarily a good man, but a better man, with his eyes opened to how flawed his ideology was.